Well, welcome to today's webinar on Robot HA in a PowerHA environment. We're going to be talking today about both PowerHA and Robot HA as a standalone product, but then also talk about some synergies too with the products. And we're going to cover how to get coverage for data that's specifically in applications that might still be in SYSBAS if you feel the need to do replication for them and how that would work. Today's webinar is live. We're going to record it as we are already. We have handouts that you will be able to get from today's webinar, and we'll have a question and answer at the end of today's session, along with a few polling questions. We have questions for you, hopefully that you plan to participate in those. We do appreciate that too. So let's get started here and do our introductions. Brian, we'll start first with you. What's your background and what's your role with PowerHA at HelpSystems?
So I lead the development of the PowerHA product here at HelpSystems. And then prior to being with HelpSystems, I was at IBM working on the PowerHA product there as well.
Yeah, I can't believe it'll be 2 years here this July that you've been part of our team. So very excited to have you here. You're just a great, knowledgeable resource on the PowerHA technology. And I've learned a lot here in the last couple of years. I kind of always talked about it in the past, but now we're doing it, and we'll actually even be doing a little live demo today for you. And then I'm Tom Huntington, Executive Vice President of Technical Solutions at HelpSystems. I'm also an IBM Power Champion, and I have been that for 4 years now. So excited to be here with you. I'll be at TechU, be doing a couple sessions there. My background, I've done development and support and a variety of things here at HelpSystems. So excited to be here to share our agenda today on high availability and why it's on your mind, PowerHA in an environment, what that looks like, Robot HA environment, what that looks like, and then some synergies and working together where needed. Again, either of these technologies will stand alone, but certainly you can integrate them. And then we're going to do a live demonstration today too, which is always fun, and we'll show you how a role swap goes with PowerHA from one of our environments here. So high availability, we know it's on everybody's mind, and the reason we know that is because one of the things that we do is the IBM I Marketplace study. We've been doing that for 5 years now, and the last 2 years, the second thing on people's mind was high availability disaster recovery, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. I mean, tape backups have been around for a long time. Journaling and remote journaling have been around for a long time. PowerHA is relatively a newcomer. It's only been around for a little over a decade, still quite a long time, and very prevalent in the market today. So interesting enough, it is something that's on people's mind, and we'll find out more and why that is. But you know, I think as we look at the world and what's happening, it may be that disasters like hurricanes and fires and items like that get a whole lot more media coverage today. So, you know, if you don't hear about it, obviously it won't be on your mind. But today, I mean, it's hard to avoid when those things are going on. Hearing about it in the media certainly is important. And then, you know, IBM I. Running into more and more customers that are kind of, you know, even in the smaller customers realizing, hey, this is my system of records. I have all my data there. IBM I has become a database server, and that data is just, you know, it's running our business. It's core to the business. So we have to have good HA plans, good backup plans, and be able to actually use this technology. And so you know, along with that, the access has become 24 hours a day, even for the small customer. Their users want to be able to use the system whenever they want, because that's the way it is today. You log up onto your phone and you can bank from anywhere, and you can do insurance from anywhere, you can do travel plans from anywhere, and these things need to be available. And behind a lot of those businesses is IBM I, with that huge database tracking customer orders, invoicing, travel plans, etc. And then of course we have regulations. Regulations are driving, you know, that you're part of the regulation might say you have to be able to demonstrate that you have high availability. And one of our colleagues from IT Solution Groups brings up the point, Matt Stadler always talks about, that you can get a reduction in your business insurance policy if you can demonstrate a good HA plan. And that's something that many of you don't always think about looking into, but if you can, that can help you out. And then we know, as I stated, there's been replication software journaling, local journaling and remote journaling around for many years, and there's customers that aren't happy with some of those older solutions because of cost. Maybe they're hard to use, maybe there's performance issues, and they're taking a look at what can we do differently on the platform. So the other thing we did in the marketplace study was ask people about where they were at from a recovery standpoint and what percent depend on high availability. And from the survey, almost 50% said that they depend on high availability as their main form of recovering from a disaster. You know, if we look at the survey and think about it, we had 650 customers from around the globe take it, about 60% North America, 40% non. You know, that number might be, you know, more a little higher from this group of customers because these are the more active, you know, companies that are using IBM I maybe. So of course they probably have a little bit higher level. So 50% still is a good number, but that also means there's 50% that doesn't if we just look at it from that standpoint. And of course, recovering from tape and virtual tape libraries and trying to do things in the cloud are certainly some other things that we're doing. And funny enough, there are people that do not have really any solution in place, believe it or not. So when we look at today's world of high availability, you know, you have really kind of two options. You can go the hardware route where you're using PowerHA with your SAN storage or internal storage, and then you can go SAN replication without PowerHA. And certainly there are people that are doing full system replication without an IASP. There are some issues or potential things that you might need to think about that are different when you do that, because you have to consider that you are really then doing a full IPL from your target system. So you can do hardware replication and not have IASP, but it is a full IPL. And then additional bandwidth because of the fact that hardware replication with FSR, you're replicating even things like temporary storage. And then as Brian always points out, you don't have the protection when doing OS maintenance, PTFs, OS upgrades, those kinds of things. So in both cases with PowerHA and with FSR, there are softwares involved either from lab services or from IBM with the PowerHA. So it's not just all hardware, there is software, and hence that's our involvement here. We work on the software on behalf of IBM for PowerHA. And then we get into logical replication. Your other options have been around for 30 plus years really, using initially local journaling only, and then as IBM in the late 90s, mid 90s built in remote journaling, the ability to do local and remote journaling for that. And of course, I like to always refer to this too as software-based replication. All right, so let's take a look. We have our first polling question here. What are you using for high availability? I'm going to open up that first question. You should see it up here shortly. Brian, are you seeing it on your end?
Yeah.
Good, good. So are you using logical replication or software-based replication, PowerHA hardware-based replication, SAN-based replication? You restore from backups, or you're not sure. And I know some of you might be using a combination, but unfortunately, GoToMeeting, I'm only allowed 5 options, so I have to pick and choose what I do here. So we thank you for answering this polling question. Again, if you like today's webinar, it is being recorded and it will be available for replay back on our website. So we have about 500 recorded webinars on our website from, you know, PowerHA, of course, now BRMS topics. We have you know, security, we have other automation topics, and then everything else we do like network monitoring and robotic process automation, you name it. So we have a lot of things going on at HelpSystems. I want to thank everybody for answering this first polling question. I'm going to close it out here, even though we didn't get everybody 100%. Looks like logical replication, software-based replication is the number one. No surprise, it's been around the longest, 40%, 20% using PowerHA, hardware-based replication. We have some people, more, 27% just doing SAN-based replication, and then 27% with us that are doing no real HA, and then a few that are not sure. So thank you for answering that. I'll share the results out to you, and sorry I didn't do that sooner, but let's move along here. All right, So in the PowerHA environment is our next topic, and over to you, Brian, to talk about this diagram in PowerHA.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I'll mention again is that, as Tom mentioned, PowerHA has been on the market for a little over a decade now. And as was mentioned previously, it uses hardware-based replication. And in order to separate out the operating system and the temporary storage from your business and application data, so that we can give you that outage protection against software outages such as the OS upgrade, PTFs, and so forth, your business and application data really must be placed in an independent ASP. Now, even though PowerHA does not use remote journaling, we still say that you should journal your data just like you should journal your data with a single system without any sort of HA solution. And then one analogy I like to use to think of an independent ASP is something like an external hard drive that you might unplug from one system and plug into another system. Only an independent ASP is a lot more integrated and transparent to users on IBM i than an external drive is on, say, like a Windows system. However, the independent ASP is only available on your current primary system. And because of that, there are certain types of objects that don't really make sense in an independent ASP. These things that you need on your system, such as security and configuration related objects, things like user profiles, authorization lists, and so forth. And for those types of objects with PowerHA, we have the administrative domain to synchronize those between your systems.
Excellent, Brian. You know, and one of the things I kind of, as I got involved in PowerHA, started referring to PowerHA Flavors, okay? And what I mean by that is there are different configurations. A lot of customers don't realize that you can use PowerHA with internal disk. And when you're talking internal disk, you're talking geographic mirroring for that fact. And then there's different forms of synchronous and asynchronous in that. And then we get into the SAN-based replication and using PowerHA with global mirror, metro mirror, LUN level switching. So depending upon your configuration, for instance, LUN level switching, you're sharing a SAN within the same data center. Metro mirror, you're literally within a metro area, 30 kilometers or less, and you're sharing the SAN. And then with Global Mirror, I know of customers that are doing replication across the Great Pond called Atlantic Ocean, and they're replicating, data across SAN to SAN across to entire continents. And then, of course, we can combine these things and into multiple solutions. So let's take it back to you, Brian, to talk about internal.
Okay, so geographic mirroring is, as Tom mentioned, PowerHA's technology for internal storage, or I should say typically with internal storage. It can be used with any type of storage, but oftentimes when you get to external storage, it's a better advantage to use the external storage technology. Oftentimes we recommend less than 4 terabytes of data. And the primary reason for this is with geographic mirroring, when there's unplanned failures, you have to do a full resync of all of your data. So it's just that kind of recommendation is to be mindful of that resync time. The picture here, which I won't go into details, is for synchronous geographic mirroring, meaning both copies of your data are identical, giving you the best recovery point. But as you start to spread your systems further and further away, you start to affect the performance of waiting for that target system or that backup system to get the data. And so there's also an asynchronous flavor that allows you to get the systems further apart, but then the target system's a little bit behind.
Yeah, and technically this diagram is asynchronous, right? Where the data's, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And then we got Metro Mirror, Brian. What's different with this?
And then MetroMirror is an external storage replication technology where the storage does the work of the replication, and then PowerHA integrates this with the I. So all of your independent ASP data is on the external storage. This is synchronous, which is, again, giving you that best recovery point possible. However, due to the synchronous nature of, let's go back to MetroMirror here.
Okay.
Due to the synchronous nature, the theoretical distances are around 300 kilometers, but the practical distance is closer to less than 30 kilometers, just due to bandwidth and the performance degradation you start to see as you pull these things further apart. And then after that, we have Global Mirror, which is the asynchronous flavor. And again, it's external storage. It used to be primarily DS8000. We are seeing more and more Storewise becoming very, very popular for Global Mirror.
That's true.
And again, this is asynchronous, so there aren't distance limitations, but you do still need to consider your bandwidth to make sure that you keep your recovery point in check. And then, as Tom mentioned, you can combine several technologies together within PowerHA to really form your solution. So this slide is combining our LUN level switching for a local HA solution with Global Mirror for a disaster recovery solution, along with Flash Copy for doing offline backups. Flash Copy isn't a requirement for PowerHA, but it is something that a lot of PowerHA users choose to use, but it does require IBM SAN to use it.
So as Brian mentioned earlier, there are some objects that don't go into your independent auxiliary storage pool. And by the way, I should say, PowerHA has been around for a decade. IASP were probably around 10 years prior to that. So this is technology that's been in the platform for, really almost 2 decades. So it's not new. There have been enhancements as IBM has put more and more objects that can run into an IASP, but still some things to think about. Your security objects, which can be replicated with admin domain, some of the configuration objects, and of course you may have other applications that you leave out in the SYSBAS itself. So we won't spend a whole lot of time going through every one of those objects. Back to you, Brian, to talk about this and some advantages of hardware-based replication.
So some of the advantages of hardware-based replication are really that any object that's in the independent ASP or any library in the independent ASP is replicated. And some of this leads to, we typically see some faster and easier role swaps so that people who have PowerHA can become, kind of the people who are 100% confident in their HA solution. And some of that's driven by this, any object in the independent ASP is replicated. There's also less monitoring with hardware-based replication. That doesn't mean you should never test your solution or never look at it, but the monitoring is very light. It's oftentimes cheaper than logical replication. And then with external storage, Flash Copy can be used for offline backups or BI purposes. I think now Tom will probably take a little bit into robot HA and logical replication.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And let's talk a little bit about that, because we are talking about synergies today and places where people might still want to use software-based logical replication alongside of PowerHA. And so, as we know, with software-based replication, it's based on journaling. And as Brian pointed out, journaling doesn't go away locally for PowerHA. You still need that when you bring the system up. It's going to use that to help rebuild things potentially. Right. So with remote journaling, what we're looking at is physical files, data queues, data areas, and IFS objects, and that's happening real time. So within nanoseconds, data is hitting the journal locally. It's also hitting the remote journal, and then it's being applied to the database on the target system. That's how most all replication software works. We also have to be cognizant that there's some objects that aren't journaled technically the same way, like a new program object or a job description. And so with those products in our solution, we pick those up with save change object APIs and use those to periodically grab those net new objects and send them over to the target, obviously controlled by the end user to configure. Again, another big difference with PowerHA, what you put in the IASP automatically goes over to the targeted IASP. And then user profiles and spool files, pick those up through your Q audit journal. So the important point here is, as an end user, you define the rules, and there are some reasons why you might want to use software-based replication with this technology. And this is all instances, and so you might have some systems with logical replication and some with PowerHA. So, benefits with this technology, as shown in the diagram, both sides are active. So you do have people that sometimes do their backups over on their target systems. They sometimes do their BI from there. They're performing offsite backups on target systems without impacting your RPO can be done. Allow system migrations. So you see software replication being used quite a bit for migrations. We're in conversations with cloud providers and being able to move data from on-prem to cloud. You can have multiple target systems with this technology. Not that you couldn't do the similar thing with PowerHA. Customizable replication rules. Maybe you don't want to replicate everything, so that's certainly an option here. And then, if you're in an environment where you're in transition hardware-wise, one of the benefits here is that we do work with really kind of in any type of disk. You literally could have internal on-site and external disk off-site, and the technology is going to work with it. And it does use less bandwidth because it is really only sending the transaction data. So I do know some customers that are unfortunately in some areas still today, even that the bandwidths are limiting, so they might use both a combination of PowerHA and software replication for bandwidth reasons. So let's talk a little bit about this technology working together. As we take our diagram and expand a bit, we have PowerHA running in the data center maybe, and we're running that technology to keep two systems in sync using the IASP technology. We also, from the IASP, could have local journaling and do local and remote journaling to another system for BI purposes. And so we do have customers that use that with Robot HA. They'll do local and then remote and then do BI and queries and those kinds of things off of another partition in their environment, while PowerHA is responsible for the high availability. We also have some things like maybe some system utilities. Maybe there is an application that kind of sits in between IASP and the SYSBAS, and they want to replicate those data. You can use Robot HA and have it installed in SYSBAS and be replicated in real time. Because again, with PowerHA, you really have two active operating systems, SYSBASes, running on both systems, but you only have one IASP that you're switching in between the two. And maybe that'll be a little more evident as we do a demonstration today. So keep in mind, again, maybe some of your applications cannot or should not be loaded in the IASP. Most can be. You just maybe choose not to. You might choose to say, I want my security utilities because they're managing profiles and they're monitoring authorization lists and other security things to stay out in the IASP, but yet protect data. I'm storing in SYSBAS, yet protect data that's in the IASP. Performance collection, I think about that. It runs all in SYSBAS. Maybe your change management utilities, your spool utilities, your those are things that would probably stay in your SYSBAS. Now, things like job scheduling, like Robot Schedule, for instance, I would be putting that out in my IASP because I want, when I switch my business application, I want my job scheduling that's associated with it to continue to flip back and forth, and you can do that. Okay, so sometimes the proposal is a combination of PowerHA and Robot HA, but again, I want to make sure we're perfectly clear that this can stand alone. Here's some reasons why you might want to do this. Again, is that PowerHA does require an IASP, and maybe some of your applications aren't in the IASP. This gives us the ability to still have coverage for them, and we can certainly take care of that. And then we have data center maybe runs PowerHA, and DR is a tool like Robot HA because of communication speeds. Business intelligence. We do have customers too that want to build test data even on the same server, they might have, 4 partitions. They have a production, multiple production servers, and they want to build some to test data real time. My only point on that is your test data is real data, so make sure you also secure it. And the one limitation in admin domain, and we do have a few customers that have exceeded the number of user profiles they can have in it, and currently we have a 45,000 profile limitation, and you might use software replication instead then in those environments. So Brian, I think we promised them a little bit of live demo here before we wrap up today. So let me see if I have my 2 systems running in the background, and I do. So are you seeing that right now, Brian?
Yeah.
So, one of the things is if I do a set ISP group and I go to my ASP, if I set ASP group, that's the command to set it up. I can go into a tool like Robot Schedule now, and this is actually running an IASP, and it's out there running today. Okay, so we can see it's up and running. If I go in, I have jobs set up. Not a big environment. I can also run our GUI. So the idea is that you're potentially swapping out your business application with your job scheduling. So this environment here, I have Robot Schedule installed in SYSBAS, and I have it installed in the IASP. And Brian, I know you work on the clustering technology. That's really kind of the main thing behind PowerHA, isn't it, from a software perspective?
That's one of the big building blocks to PowerHA.
Yeah. And then as we can see, we've configured a cluster environment. We got device domains in here, administration domains, and then we have our cluster resource group. So if I go into this is where I change my target. So we can see right now my system Able is active. I have another system called Elba over here. And if I want to do a role swap, now my job's gonna end here too because I'm actually in the IASP. I could certainly sign off, and kids, we don't recommend this at home, but all I have to do is hit enter here, and this is actually going to do the role swap. So it's going to take and vary off this partition here from the source system and then bring it up over here on the target system. And if I do my display ASP status, see, even if I can learn how to do this, you can learn how to do this. We'll see right now that on our target system, the drive was down, and I think I can do auto refreshing here, Brian, too, right? So F17 here. So this will update while we're talking. But now if I sign back on to my original source system, notice I still can sign into SysBase. I also can still see that I have Robot HA here running, and I have an active set of rules going on where it's replicating data between my backup and my target system. So if I were to go in and change data here, it would actually replicate it, okay? And I'm also replicating data to another system called Wisdom BI. So this gives me the ability to have both software replication and hardware replication running at the same time, one in SysBase, and the other one is controlling my IaaS technology. So we haven't come up over here yet, Brian. So let me take a look here again. It will in a little bit. It takes a little bit because we're technically varying off and then varying on. Unless you didn't train me well, Brian. Did you train me well?
I trained you well.
Okay, so we'll let that run in the background there. While that's happening, I'm going to open up another polling question too, and ask you how we might help you out with high availability. Maybe you've never done a role swap and you need some help with that. Let's talk. We'd like a one-on-one demo of Robot HA. We need better monitoring for our current HA solutions. We would like to have a one-on-one discussion around, let's see what we have here, around PowerHA, so we certainly can do that. And then let's schedule a tech update. So one of the things that we do is we do have periodic tech updates for customers where we walk them through everything new at HelpSystems. So feel free to answer that question. And then while we wait here, what's the if we have any questions out there, any tips on somebody who wants to get started with PowerHA, any recommendations there, Brian?
I think one of the first things is to start looking at your applications and start figuring out which ones make sense to go in an independent ASP and which are those system utilities that maybe don't make sense in an independent ASP, and kind of working down that path.
Yeah. Okay. And that's, and, you know, and you can go to Common. Lab Services does a lot of implementations for customers, right? And helping out with PowerHA. And then we have other business partners too. So if somebody's, you know, really interested in wanting to get going, what you have to keep in mind with PowerHA, HelpSystems doesn't sell it directly. We actually don't even do the implementation services on it. IBM supports it, and then our team supports level 3. And then we have business partners and lab services that help implement it worldwide. And it has become a very, very popular technology for customers. So let me bring my PowerPoint back up here. We've done the polling question, and just kind of want to remind people about a few things here related to, are you seeing my screen, Brian?
We still see the polling.
Okay, let me close, as I was wondering, and okay, good. Now, we should be good, right? Okay, good. So in summary, you know, there are alternatives out there for high availability. You know, PowerHA has been around for over a decade. This is proven technology. A lot of the lug customers run this technology, and a lot of small customers run it. So it is something that does scale. It's just one of those things where we need to have a conversation with you and help you through and understanding what the technology is. Robot HA too does scale large and small customers. That might be the right solution for you. And if we need to, the products will work together for you and helping you out with your HA activity. So the other thing that we talk about often is monitoring. We can monitor PowerHA and we can monitor software replication. That's something you shouldn't forget about. Brian was telling me about a story where somebody went to roll swap and they couldn't because I believe they ran out of disk or they ran out of a number of jobs. They were getting an error on their target SYSBAS. So keep in mind you have 2 active SYSBASes, and you should really be monitoring both the source and target, whether you have software replication or hardware replication. There's probably less things that, you know, this fear of being out of sync, that's probably the biggest thing that goes away with PowerHA, because everything you put in the IASP automatically is going to be replicated for you. So that's one of the big benefits. All right, so those are some of the things we do. It's time for questions. I went over a little bit. That always happens. Let's see what other questions we have out here. And one of the things that Larry wanted to remind us, Brian, is that there will be your, at Power Up, there will be your PowerHA labs. So if you're looking to get some hands-on experience, we can help you out with that. And let's see, what else do we have? You know, and so one of the questions we have is, how is Robot HA priced? Robot HA is priced based on instances. Source and target is what you should really be thinking about, or source and maybe multiple targets. So that's how we price that. So a lot of great questions out there, but we're kind of at that point in time where we have to wrap up because we promised only half an hour and we went longer than that, Brian. Any final thoughts for people with PowerHA?
Just feel free to let us know if you guys have any questions and reach out to us.
Yeah, we'll definitely help you out anytime. We both answer our emails, of course, and certainly look forward to seeing you at IBM TechU in Atlanta or Common in Anaheim in later part of May. So thank you again for joining us on another webinar from HelpSystems. You all have a wonderful day.